it's Carole Freeman, Hypnotic Nutrition, the creator of the 90-Day Keto Diet Program. I am here today with Jenna Jorgensen,
Hello.
the one and only. Well, I'm excited to talk to you because you're a naturopathic doctor and a ketonian, or what do you call yourself?
I haven't thought of that.
Okay. Ketoer.
Ketonite?
Ketonite. Oh, there's so many possibilities there.
There really are.
Well, tell us a little bit, about who you are, what your practice is, what's your specialty.
Yeah, so I am a naturopathic doctor currently at Emerald City Naturopathic Clinic, and that's in North Seattle area.
Okay.
It's one of the longest standing naturopathic primary care clinics in the area.
Oh, nice.
I've been there for the past 2 to 3 years, if you count some years as a student, or a year as a student.
Okay.
And primarily I do primary care, but I'm starting to get into more specialties of environmental health, weight loss, detox, how all of that comes into play, which is why keto came into my life.
Yeah, okay.
And I also do some pediatrics and just all around birth to death.
Get a lot of experience, so environmental health, kind of mold exposure and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, around here in the Northwest, that can cause some serious problems for people.
It's all over the place.
Yeah. So you're a graduate of Bastyr University, and I realized that we know each other online, but we actually were together there at school at the same time. And it's a small school, but you spent a lot of years there when you get your degrees there, so.
A lot of years and a lot of time.
Yeah. Yes. And so you think you're going to miss it when you leave, but then I've only been back a couple of times in the, it's been 4 years since I've graduated now, so.
Yeah, I don't know that I've been to the campus
since
I graduated.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful campus,
it
but
is.
You wear yourself out there after being there long enough, so. Well, so how did you end up going to Bastyr? What was your journey to get there?
I had a pretty simple journey going there. I actually thought that I was going to be a physician's assistant when I was in undergrad, and had some ups and downs with that, and decided that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. Got into community health education.
Okay.
And once I started on that track, I decided that I did want more of that one-on-one clinical setting. So I started Googling, of all things, and Bastyr came up for holistic medicine.
So are you from Seattle or something?
No, I'm from Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you get the cheese? Is that cheese?
Brats and cheese.
Okay. Yeah.
And beer.
Well, two of those three things fit really well with keto.
They make keto really easy. But yeah, so I just started Googling and came across naturopathic medicine and was like, what is this?
Oh,
I had no idea. I was in my the end of my 4th of 5 years in undergrad, and stumbled upon Bastyr and decided that that's what I wanted to do with my life. So
what was your undergrad in?
Community health education.
Okay.
Yep, yeah. And then I had a biology minor or something like that because I was pre-medicine for most of the time, which worked out really well because it ended up being what I decided to do. But yeah, I had done some shadowing of some PAs and nurse practitioners and realized that they didn't get to spend very much time with the people, and they were often just giving an antibiotic or a medication, and I really wasn't into that. I wanted more of an individualized approach, so I found naturopathic medicine and haven't looked back since.
Oh, that's great. That's so great. Yeah. Well, that's really cool. So then, how did you discover keto, and what was it like in the beginning? Were you like most of us were like, no, that's terrible for you, but then wait a minute, maybe I should learn some more? How did it go?
Yeah, so I had played around with paleo for a while I was in school, and I felt pretty good doing that. Mostly I felt good. I didn't have very many weight changes with it. And then I started my residency, and the Dr. Molly that I work for, she is a 30-plus year midwife and naturopath, so we were doing some prenatal things, we were doing preconception types of things, and she introduced me to one of her previous residents, Dr. Bonnie Nedra, who's now down in Ashland, Oregon.
Okay.
And she does a lot of preconception detox type of work. And so kind of through the grapevine, I got hooked up with her and realized that what she was doing was a keto adaptation detox type of program.
Okay.
And so I learned about that through her, and she was interested in introducing her program up here in Seattle.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, let me test it out first.
Right.
As a doctor, most of the things that we recommend, we've tried.
Yeah.
Unless it's clinically not relevant for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, all right, I'm game. Let me try this out. So I started doing the program, which is a really intense ketogenic diet along with detox and all sorts of other pieces with it, and it was incredible. My husband and I did it together.
Okay.
And we both just had a really incredible experience with it. And so afterwards, I talked with the rest of the folks at our clinic and was like, okay, I think this is actually a really great idea for us. So we've brought it into the clinic, and we've run one group program thus far.
Okay.
And gearing up for another one probably in August, and basically just take people through keto and detox at the same time.
So what kind of changes did you notice then? You said it was really incredible.
Yeah, so I got a lot of brain fog that just went away after like a week or two.
Yeah.
I lost about 15 pounds throughout the process, and I also have chronic joint pain, mostly in my knees, and that improved by about 75% throughout the process. And digestive stuff that I acquired being a stressed out student for 5 years, that all really settled down. My digestion has been a lot better ever since then.
Yeah.
And my husband noticed similar things. He was, he's in grad school right now.
Okay.
And he found that he's now able to focus for longer. In fact, I have to remind him to eat because he feels good not eating. Yeah. And I'm like, no, you still need nutrients. They're important for other things. And so that was his big thing, was the just focus and mental clarity, and also his energy. For both of us, we're big into hiking in the Seattle surrounding area, outdoor mountain scene, and we noticed that we could go for twice as long without needing even to take a snack with us, as long as we had good hydration.
Oh gosh, if we could go back to school in ketosis now, how life would be changed.
It would be fantastic.
My intern that works with me now is keto, and she's just finishing up her senior year, and I'm like, oh, what would that be like to have that? But so how long have you and your husband been officially keto?
Officially, so we started our keto adaptation process in end of last August. Okay. And then we finished the program part of it at the end of September. Okay. And we've been playing around with fasting days and different forms of the diet ever since then. And kind of finding what balance works.
And you just felt so good, there's no reason to go back to, doing else, or? Yeah,
well, we every once in a while we have what we call our sugar days, which mainly are sugar and or grain. Okay. And generally what we find is we don't feel very good after we do that. And so those days at the beginning we're like, okay, we're allowed to have one sugar day a week. And we were using it, but then we didn't feel good each time afterwards. And so those have spread out.
Yeah, well that's good, yeah.
Yeah, and our general diet has broadened just a little bit. Because we were pretty strict for our 8 weeks that we were keto adapting, of really no root veggies and no fruit. Okay. So now we do a pretty good amount of vegetables and fruit, and still not too many of the high starchy types of veggies, but
so kind of a modified, lower, still very low carb. Yep. Do you do any ketone testing, or you just?
I do occasionally, mostly on my fasting days. I'll still check it to make sure that I'm getting up into the zone there. Yeah. But for the most part, I don't. The cool thing about going through a keto adaptation type of process is that you learn to feel when your body's using ketones. It feels completely different from when it's using glucose or carbohydrates. Yeah. So
you're able now to like kind of go, I bet I'm a 2.1, and you do it and you're like, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not quite to the number, but I can tell that I'm above 1.0.
Okay,
for sure.
okay.
Yeah.
That's cool, yeah, because I get some people going through my program and they're like, I don't know if I'm there or not yet. It's like, you're probably not there then if you're not sure.
You'll know.
And some people it's a little more gradual, but yeah, they usually know something. So let's see, so many questions in there too. Yeah, the whole hiking. So I was curious how long you'd been keto adapted for the hiking part, because I found the same thing. I hadn't gone hiking since before my car accident 2 years ago, and so I got to go, I think maybe it was, I can't even remember when I went now, several months ago anyways, and I was just amazed, because I used to have terrible hypoglycemia when I would hike, and I would, by the end of the hike, I would be like delirious, so low sugar, and so I learned I had to have like, a Cliff Bar, which is just like 40 grams of sugar or something in it, to be able to go hiking, and it was just because of my body's poor ability to access its fat stores. And so the last time I went hiking was the first time in over 2 years that I'd gone, and I not only didn't have breakfast, right, because that's pretty normal on keto for me, is just, I'm not hungry, I don't want to eat.
Yeah, bulletproof coffee.
I think something similar. I had, fat in my coffee, and I didn't have breakfast. We were out hiking for 2 or 3 hours, and everybody else is stopping every once in a while and shoving their face full of food, and I'm like, I don't need anything, and at the end, we were going to go meet for food afterwards, and I felt actually more energized. It was interesting because once my body had really dug into accessing fat and hiking for that long, I was like, I found myself driving home thinking like, I think there's a park over there with a trail I could walk on the way, and I was like, I want to go farther. Like, it was just, it turned it on. So, similar experience then for you too, like.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you exercise, that promotes your ketones to go up. So, and if you've gone through the keto adaptation process where your body knows how to utilize those ketones, it's like, holy buckets, I have all of these energy molecules. Now let's go. Yeah. And what we found, interestingly, going through the adaptation process, we have this hike that we've done many times. It's kind of our go-to, go out on a Saturday and get a really good hike in. And it's about 6 miles and I think maybe 2,000 foot elevation. It's a pretty good hike. Yeah. And we did it before we started, and I was achy. I was super tired afterwards. That was my normal, the normal experience.
Yeah, that's how you're supposed to feel when you exercise, right?
You have to eat at the top of the trail and all of that. And then we did it about 2 to 3 weeks into the process, and we were right in what Dr. Bonnie calls in her program the wonkies, where your brain's trying to figure out how to use those ketones, your muscles are trying to figure out how to use those ketones, and you've used up all of the back storage of glucose. And so it was slow going, and I couldn't switch over into anaerobic exercise where I was like breathing really hard and working really hard, because that requires glucose. Right. But if I stayed below that threshold, I could feel that it was starting to kick in. And by the time we got to the top, neither one of us, we had a little bit of some bacon when we got to the top. And
perfect.
Yeah. The joys of keto. And but it was more so like for nostalgia, like, oh, we made it to the top, we do something. Yeah. And then we started to head back down, and by the end of the hike, like my mental energy was up. My muscles were tired, which is to be expected, but I felt better. And then once we were done with the program and we did that hike again, we flew up and down in half the time that it normally took us to do it, because we were just trucking.
Yeah. It's so, isn't it? I mean, when you're in it, you're like, of course, right? But people who probably are listening to this that haven't tried keto themselves, or anybody else who, the typical sports nutrition is you need carbs in order to perform, and it's just, you get your body switched over using fat as its primary fuel, and it's just amazing. Yeah. Did you notice then too that you were hardly breathing hard at all on the last one time you went up there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we were really going up, we were huffing and puffing,
Yeah.
but we were going probably 2 to 3 times faster than
Yeah.
what we normally would have been going. So
Yeah.
that it made a huge difference.
Were you just like shaking your head like I can't believe that this is what my body can do? Like,
Yeah, well, that, and normally on the way down is when my knees would start to kick in.
Yeah.
And we were actually jogging down part of the trail because I felt so good. My knees didn't hurt.
Yeah.
And we were like running down this
Wow.
trail, and our dog was loving it.
It's like, finally.
Yeah, he's like, this is great. And so it was, when you've been working with something, I think I've had knee pain for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
To have that go away was just like so incredible.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of my story too, is the pain relief, and that's one of the things that's really exciting to work with people on, because there's a lot of fantastic naturopathic doctors, there's a lot of fantastic alternative healthcare practices that just make tremendous changes in people's lives, but there aren't really a lot of really great things that relieve chronic pain for a lot of people, and keto is so powerful for that. It's one of the things that's so exciting about it, is seeing people have been in pain for 5 or 10 years, and they've tried everything, and they're just resolved to like, well, this is what life is like, and to be able to give them that relief is really profound.
Yeah, you just got to talk them into actually making the changes for keto.
Yeah.
And once they get going with it, then they feel so good that it's hard to talk them into adding anything new to their diet, which is an important piece. I think with at least the keto adaptation program that I do, the beginning of it is like really, really strict.
Yeah.
And people end up feeling so good that I'm like, no, really, it's okay to eat blueberries. They're good for you. They have extra nutrients that your body needs and your cardiovascular system enjoys. So
you're like, I don't want to risk going back there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of counseling that comes into play when you're working through that process.
Yeah.
That's where the intermittent fasting piece comes in too, because it's that I do it weekly. So today's my fasting day.
So tell me that was the other, as you started talking, I was like, we got to talk about that too. Yeah. So tell me what led to that, and then what you find works for you, and
so the whole idea with the keto adaptation program that I'm doing is that you do the diet really strictly, you get through the process, and then you play around with how you feel with what you're eating after that. And because it's such a stopgap in the inflammation and the inflammatory process in the body, people feel really good, so they can actually listen to their body when they eat something that makes them not feel good.
Right.
And so what we encourage is for people to play around a little bit with their diet when they get done and really pay attention to how they feel. But along with that is bringing in some intermittent fasting to make sure that this tool that they've just developed of being keto adapted stays sharp, and that they can switch over to burning fat whenever they don't have any carbohydrates around, and they can use that tool as necessary for their individual health needs.
Yeah.
And so the fasting in and of itself is individual. So for myself, I do at least one day a week, dinner to dinner.
Okay.
And by fasting, I mean I might have bulletproof coffee, or I might have tea with some coconut oil.
Yeah.
I'm likely having some sort of fat unless I'm out moving around and exercising, because that's going to bring my ketones up. And so I have that day, and that's usually the day that I'm checking my ketones to make sure they're coming up.
Yeah.
And then, but for some people, it's more of the restricting the amount of hours that they eat every day. So it might be, I only eat from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then they have those fasting hours being the rest of the time. And so it's really figuring out what works in someone's schedule, what works with their body, because every body is different in how it reacts to certain things. And I think the toxicity level of the individual also plays a role, because some people some people are more toxic, and a lot of our environmental toxins that we're exposed to just living in the world today are fat soluble, so they get stored in our fat, and when we train our body to burn fat, it then re-releases those back out into the system, and the body has to manage that. So that's one of the big things that I focus on, is how do we get those elimination channels open so that it comes out through the skin via sweat or whatever needs to happen, so that as you're burning your fat and losing weight, that you're not overwhelming your system with inflammation. And so when you're burning the fat and using that keto adaptive tool, we want to make sure that you're not pushing it too much. So for some people who might be a little bit more toxic in their fat stores, it's going to shorten the amount of time that I recommend that they're fasting for, because otherwise they start to get symptoms.
Okay.
And so then we use that as information for, okay, your limit is 16 hours, and so we're gonna keep it at that. We're gonna do these detoxification measures, and then we're gonna push it and see if your symptoms come back. And so we're using that to kind of be an objective measure with how their detox process is going as well.
Well, this whole intermittent fasting, it's a fairly new idea. However, if we look back historically, we weren't meant to eat all day long from the time we wake up until we go to bed. And that's a relatively new thing. And even, I would say, maybe even the last 30 years, do you think that that's kind of become a thing? Because when I was a kid, we ate 3 meals a day. And even when I was a kid, we didn't have, snacks all day long. Yeah. And so, it's more conventional that people eat, 3 meals a day and not snacks all day long and not dessert every night at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And even I've read some, theories or articles or whatever you want to call it, that we look back even further, and it was more common then that we maybe ate, we had a much smaller window of time that we ate in, that maybe, you ate in the afternoon and the evening or something, or that you had breakfast and one other meal. And so it's this new thing, and we, maybe the same as I was told, was that you need, one of the best ways of eating is to eat 6 small meals a day, and it keeps your blood sugar up.
Well, and I think that it's somewhat true for someone who's not keto adapted and can't utilize their fat stores, because otherwise their blood sugar crashes. So as a physician, and now knowing keto, I'm put in this position of, to some people I'm recommending that exact thing and planting the seed of maybe this potential change in the future when they're ready. And then for other people I'm like, all right, 2 meals, 3 meals, what are, that's what's going to be good for you, and they already know that because they feel better. But it's a really interesting space to be in with that recommendation. And I think another thing that has changed a lot over the years is how active we are, and physically active in our day-to-day. I mean, going back a long time ago, we were out roaming around, foraging for things, or hunting, or working. I'm from Wisconsin. I'm from small farm town, so out working in the fields all day long, you're using up any glucose that you might have been eating if you were eating more grains than what we're eating now. So I think that's also a big difference as to why keto's working really, really well now for lots of people. A lot of people ask me about, is keto the way we've been meant to eat? Should we have always been eating this way? And what I've come to believe myself is that it would be more natural if we had metabolic flexibility. That would be a healthy state. That periods of time we go without food, or we have a higher fat diet, and then maybe in the summer we have this, maybe not abundance like we have now, but there's more berries and roots and things like that are available. And so I think that it was a more historically relevant and a healthy way for us is that we had metabolic flexibility, that we could eat a higher carbohydrate diet at times, but it was a smaller window of period. It wasn't every day for 12 months a year. And then we also had the ability to switch back over to using our fat stores. So is that kind of what... Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is how those carbohydrates used to be stored and eaten. So if you think of before the time of refrigerators, oftentimes things were fermented, which is going to eat at the sugars, because fermentation eats sugar. That's how those organisms grow. And so if things were fermented, say you had root veggies like beets that are really high in sugar and carbohydrates, and also lots of other nutrients, right? If you could only eat fresh beets for the time that they came out of the ground,
Right.
and you didn't have a way to store them, oftentimes they would get fermented. And so not only are you getting the probiotics that help the digestion process down throughout the entire intestine, you're also having it pre-digested, so you're not getting as much of that sugar and the carbohydrate from that food.
Well, and then you're getting the vinegar, the acetic acid, right?
Yeah.
If you read any Dr. Jason Fung's blog or
I have
articles,
not.
so he has several posts on the benefits of vinegar and how vinegar reduces insulin, and not really known completely the mechanism, but perhaps that's another way. You've got, starchy carbs that are also in vinegar, and so you get a little bit of a buffer there with the effect of that. So all these things we have yet to fully explore and understand how that fits in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and so then along the lines of like the ideal situation and the healthiest probably for most humans is this metabolic flexibility, being able to switch back and forth. However, also I think that there's a large percentage of the population that can't regain that metabolic flexibility, that they're so insulin resistant that by having these high carb days, that it may be doing more damage. Because I see people then that, eating more carbohydrates triggers uncontrollable cravings and relapse for them, and then they just end up binging. And so is that your experience, or do you think everybody can get back to a state of metabolic flexibility? Or
I'm an optimist.
Okay.
So I always think that everyone has the potential, but it's going to be a lot harder for some folks than it is for other folks.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's also the component of like a sugar addiction and what that triggers in the brain, similar to gluten. And so I think that depending on where you're at, if carbs have never been a big issue for you, you're gonna get that flexibility a lot easier. Whereas if you're that person that secretly hoards candy or chocolate or bread or any of that, it's going to be a much trickier situation. In fact, when I'm starting people off on keto, we have this conversation of, do you feel like you have to have sugar, you have to have a carbohydrate, and does it drive your thought process often? And if that's the case, we're going to have a conversation about a potential sugar addiction, which is not talked about very often.
Right.
And with that, then we're going to talk about the alternative sweeteners that are technically okay in keto, but they're still triggering that sweet taste. So if for me, for instance, I definitely have a sensitivity to sweet. I can switch over to that craving sweet really easily. And so for the whole process, I didn't use stevia, I didn't use xylitol, I didn't use any of those things because I didn't even want my taste buds to get used to it. And so I do play around with that also with folks individually to say, all right, if you're trying to figure out every day after your keto meal, what can you have that's going to be your sweet? Like, can I make some homemade whipped cream and throw some stevia in it? That's
or looking at fat bomb recipes on Pinterest every night.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how can I get it in and keep some semblance of what I ate before? That's a bigger conversation that I'm starting to have more often with folks of like, hey, maybe we should just like completely remove that sweet taste.
I agree. That's what I recommend in my program, is that people cut out all of even the keto-friendly sweeteners in the beginning, just to retain the taste buds and to break that habit of having to have something sweet all the time.
Well, and I like the retaining or retraining the sweet buds, the taste buds.
The sweet buds, that's a good one.
That's a new phrase. And because there's something special about when you take all of that out, when you bring something back in, it regains this intense appreciation for food and for whole food, because all of a sudden it all tastes amazing. I don't think I will ever forget the day that I brought a macadamia nut back into my life, and I literally like ate one macadamia nut, and I could have swore it was a cookie. Like, it was the most amazing
They are
taste.
delicious.
They really are.
Yeah.
And that was a conversation that my husband and I had a lot when we were going through this process, and as we were adding foods back in, of like, wow, this really tastes good. Like, even if somebody doesn't do keto, they should restrict their diet more often just to appreciate food and not, like, get sucked into this, like, monotonous, like, breakfast, lunch, dinner, all of that.
Yeah, the high salt, sugar, fat, and
Yeah.
dumbs down your taste buds, all
Exactly.
of that. Yeah. Well, and you talked about intermittent fasting. I've just started finally. Well, I'd always done like a skip breakfast type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So like a natural intermittent fasting of like 16 hours or so. However, I had to take a really honest look at what I was eating, and I was, for the last 6 months, I was not really tracking anything and just eating keto friendly foods. But what I really realized was that I was falling back into like kind of snacking. Like, oh, this is keto friendly, just have a handful of that, handful of that, and a little bite of that, and so even though I thought I was not eating breakfast, I really was eating almost the entire day, and then looking for something in the evening after dinner, kind of something a little sweet, cream cheesy or something like that, and I was like, maybe I know that intermittent fasting has a lot of benefits. I think this is time I finally get real with myself and really do it. And so I started by pushing back that first meal of the day. And so I typically would have, my first meal of the day around 1 or so. And so I decided I'm just going to push it back to 4. My goal was to do like you do with the 24-hour fasting with a dinner-to-dinner thing. And so the first day I did it, I had a meal at 4 o'clock and I had another meal at 8. And then I resisted the urge to keep eating the rest of the night, which was the first step of hard. But I think Dr. Michael Eads has this quote about how that intermittent fasting is much more hard to think about. Like, we think it's going to be super hard, but once you're fat adapted, it actually is so much easier than you think it's going to be. And it really totally was true. Like, it was like, oh my God, it's going to be so hard, but it really was so much easier. And so then the next day I was able to do the, from that dinner until dinner the next night, I ended up doing the same thing the next day. And I had the highest blood ketone levels. I was up to 3.4 by the second time I did it. And I also broke like, a 6-month weight stall that I'd had as well. I finally hit a new low. And I was like, once you start doing it, it's like, this is cool. I can totally do it. And it's way harder when you think about it than it really is.
Absolutely. And I always choose my busiest day.
Okay, yeah.
So like today I'm fasting.
Yeah, okay.
And I had a full schedule all morning and then had to drive here in traffic, and now I'm doing this, and I won't eat until I get home tonight. But because I'm busy and I'm up and moving, like I don't even think about it as long as I'm hydrated. If I'm not hydrated, that's when I run into issues, because not only does water kind of keep the stomach full, like it's like when you're fasting you can have an empty feeling versus a hungry feeling, and differentiating between those can sometimes be a little tricky for folks. So I generally recommend, like, if you're trying to do your fasting day and you think you feel hungry, drink some water, drink a whole glass of water, and see if that goes away. Your stomach might have just felt empty. And so but if you're not getting that water, it's gonna make it harder. You're gonna feel hungry, you're gonna feel empty, and also, because if you're keto adapted, you're also going to be burning fat, which means you could be detoxing, which means you want to flush all of that out. So you want to stay really hydrated on the fasting day.
Yeah. Well, and Dr. Fung, I'll mention him again because he has a really fantastic fasting series, but he talks about how most of the hunger you feel while you're on your fasting days it's just psychological hunger.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like you see something and like, oh, I want to eat, or it's a certain time, and he said it's not actually true nutrient hunger or starvation or anything, and so he also talks about how hunger comes in waves. It's people expect that it's going to be something that's relentless and they just get hungrier and hungrier, but especially once you're fat adapted, it's like, I'm a little hungry, and then you wait a little bit and it goes away.
Yeah, normally that happens for me around lunchtime when everyone else is making their food, and I try to avoid the common spaces because I mean I like food and it smells good. So but once I step out of that situation, within 20 minutes or so, I'll think about it and I'll be like, oh, I'm not actually hungry right now.
Well, so going a whole day without food, like, why would anybody even want to do that? That doesn't sound very fun.
So there's tons of great studies out there that talk about intermittent fasting and how it's great for longevity and for healthy aging. And so those are kind of the long-term benefits of it. And really what it comes down to is an overall reduction in caloric intake. Give or take.
Yeah.
But in the immediate sense of a day of intermittent fasting, you're giving your digestive system a break. And whenever you're not using your digestive tract, that means all of the processes that would normally be going on there, your body can put those resources towards other things like healing injured knees or building your immune system. And so there's
healing that GI tissue that's been irritated for too long. Yeah.
And there's no irritation because there's no food. And so it just gives the system a break so it can focus on healing and doing all of the other things that it has to do. And so there's both short-term and long-term benefits to having that intermittent fasting.
The other one that is documented in research as well is you actually have a lower insulin load even when you restrict your window. So let's say you're only eating between 4 and 8, even if you ate the same amount of calories, your total insulin is going to be lower exposure because there's time your body takes to recover from insulin, right? And so if you're constantly eating all day long, you're going to be exposed to insulin 24 hours a day, and too high of insulin anyways. Whereas if you restrict that eating window, and especially if you can go 24 hours or longer without food, you're reducing that overall insulin load, which gives your cells a rest, so it actually helps in regenerating insulin sensitivity again. So that's another one that I'm especially interested in with my history and then family history of diabetes as well. So,
absolutely.
So the other cool thing that you have learned about in your approach with this detox is supporting liver function, right? So
yeah. So there's the liver plays a really big role in producing ketones. It's like the main organ. The mitochondria of the liver are the major ketone producing stations. And the liver's also our major detox and filtration system. So any type of toxins that you're exposed to just living in your environment have to be processed through the liver. Now, if you're learning how to burn your fat for energy, which we talked about before, can release some toxins and cause some inflammation if those elimination pathways aren't open. You can run into the issue of your liver is focusing so much on processing those toxins that it's putting all of its resources there and not nearly as many resources to producing ketones. So what I find is that if I have someone who's going through keto adaptation and their ketone numbers on the blood test are not coming up, or they're having a really hard time getting into that zone.
Yeah, like I'm doing everything right diet-wise, like why am I not in ketosis or why are my numbers not higher?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I find is that those people are more toxic and they're detoxing. And so we have to do some liver support, and anyone that I have going through keto, I have them on a lot of liver support, and I'm checking their liver enzymes before they get started to make sure that their liver can handle a detox, because there might be some things that we need to do before we push that process. And so we're looking at those liver supportive things, and then also acutely I've been recommending a lot of what's called a castor oil pack over the liver.
Which here in Seattle and Bastille Land, it's like a normal thing. Everybody's been recommended that, but maybe the rest of the people across the country, especially Wisconsin or around the world, like, tell us what a castor oil pack is.
Yeah, most people who aren't in the world of castor oil remember it from their childhood, maybe.
Well, yeah, probably back in the 17 or 1800s, it was actually a common remedy for everything, right?
Probably. Yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Fish liver oil and castor oil. Take the spoon of that.
Exactly. I don't recommend doing it internally.
It adds to your burden of toxicity.
And it also adds to a lot lot of GI distress.
Okay. Just like too much MCT oil.
Yes, it's a very powerful laxative, which is probably what most people know it as from their childhood. But when you use it topically, it's highly anti-inflammatory. And when you put heat over it topically, it drives that castor oil in deeper. So it's sending those anti-inflammatory constituents deeper into the tissue. So when you do it over your liver, which is the right side of your body, just under the rib cage, you slather some castor oil on there, put it something old that you don't care about because it will stain and you won't get it out. And then
you don't want to wash that towel.
No. And then you put a heat source over that, and so then you're driving this anti-inflammatory castor oil into the liver and helping decrease any inflammation of that processing, and it helps that processing of any toxins go quicker. So I've had people do this, and they can watch by the hour their ketone levels come up.
Wow.
Or someone who's having a toxic headache or a detox headache, and their ketones are stuck, I'll have them do this, the headache will go away, and their ketones will be up at the end of it.
That's really cool. Well, and it makes a lot of sense that your body prioritizes liver function to detoxing things because they're actually toxic, like they're poisons in our body, and if it doesn't focus its resource on that first, you can die, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we take it for granted that our body is constantly detoxing things. Basically, detox means it's converting it from something that's a poison to something that's not so poisonous to us, and so it's doing it all the time. And if things come up that it needs to focus on more, it's going to do that over making fat, making ketone bodies. And you can see this, so people will often say, like, well, you can have alcohol on keto, but it stalls ketosis or it suppresses ketosis. And this is the same principle, is that alcohol is a poison in the body, so the body's going to focus on, okay, let's slow down the ketone production, let's go over here and detox this alcohol first, and then after that we can go back to making more ketones after we get rid of this poison in the body. So same thing, and it's I think it's a really big piece that's missing and not well understood. So it's really exciting that you've had this experience and this training from Dr. Nedro. I'm gonna have to go meet her now. So it's a really exciting, cool thing, because I definitely have seen that where people diet wise are doing everything right, but they're not. Their ketones are still like 0.3 or something like that.
And I see this a lot. And one of the other things I like to throw on top of that is, because there's so much stigma around obesity and weight gain and the mental emotional effects that has on those folks, one of the things that I like to throw into the pot to, again, I'm an optimist, is that the body is really smart, and it does things to protect us all the time. If your liver, if your system doesn't process toxins well, your body might be putting on weight so that those toxins aren't floating around in the system. So it's actually a protective mechanism to say, I can't deal with these right now, I need more storage bins, so I'm going to make more storage bins. And so it kind of shifts that thought process of, this is all my fault, and why can't I lose this weight? And so adding that detoxification piece in and helping people through that part of the process, I think is really important, because we're getting people through what I call their toxic layer of weight loss. Oftentimes, and a lot of people can relate to this, they've done lots of different diets. They've done 10, 15, 20 different diets. They'll lose 10 to 15 pounds, and then they'll gain it all back plus 5. And they always get down to close to a certain set point of, say, it's always 172 pounds that things seem to go haywire. And the way that I'm starting to look at this is that 172 is that toxic layer, so we need to up the detox at that point to shift you past that toxic layer, and then we go down to the next one. And keto has been really helpful in that process and working with people with that.
Well, and then I haven't even asked you about this, so I'm just going to throw this question out there too, is how about the whole GI reset, right? Because you get a lot of reorganization of the gut bacteria that goes on, right? What do you see with that clinically?
Yeah, so that's the main thing that I see with folks actually. Even so, some people are better at following keto than other people, and I see their improvements are on that same spectrum.
Okay.
The more you follow the program, the better you feel. Yeah. But even the people who don't follow it all that well still have benefits, and the thing that I see the most is reduction in digestive complaints.
Okay.
And pretty much everyone that I have going through keto, I have them on really high doses of beneficial probiotics, so that they're not, so as their system's reorganizing, it's reorganizing with a beneficial flora versus reorganizing with who knows what. So I emphasize that. I also do a lot of emphasizing of live cultures. So live fermented sauerkrauts and things like that are food as medicine, which I'm a big proponent of, and reorganizing that gut flora using food as well.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll have to, I don't want to make specific recommendations on here, but I'll have to ask you about the whole, like, what you find to be the best probiotic to recommend, because I'm like, okay, so if we're cutting out the carbohydrates, and a lot of probiotic blends out there, like, feed off of, and I forgot now, is it the Acidophilus, which there's a certain strain that anyways, like, they eat carbs, and if you're not eating carbs, like, why keep putting that bacteria in there? So you'll have to share with me, like, what you guys have figured out, because I'm like, wait, and then I've asked so many people, and they're like, well, the research doesn't know, and, like, so the food solution is a great one, though.
That's what I was gonna say. Food is always the best route to go, because we haven't had probiotic capsules for very long, and so we have always gotten our gut flora from the food that we're eating.
Those the
fermented beets.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, and so then I'm guessing along those lines then that you don't see any need that we need to have, like, packaged resistant starch spoonfuls on a daily basis, because you could just get it from food, right?
Yes.
So, like, kimchi, sauerkraut, and
miso.
Miso, okay.
One. I mean, you have to be careful with miso because it is coming from oftentimes rice or beans of some sort. But after you're more keto adapted, I think it's more important to be getting the fermented process of that than...
Well, and typically it's like, a teaspoon or a tablespoon. It's not an entire cup or bowl of it. And so, and since it's already fermented and partially digested or mostly digested, it's a different format than... likely to not cause those reactions. So, oh gosh, what else could I ask you about then? So what do you see with dairy? Because I know there's a lot of... There are some people are like, dairy doesn't fit on keto. Most people react to it. It's super insulinogenic, and so no keto, no dairy at all. And then there's other people that are like, it's good for me.
Yeah, and I think it's another one of those things that is really individual to each person. I have some folks who are really sensitive to dairy, and they can't do dairy when they're on keto. Interestingly, I've also had people who were sensitive to dairy, started on keto, tried adding dairy back in to shake it up a little bit flavor-wise, and they did fine with it. It's taking that total inflammatory load down, that and really working and healing a leaky gut that is making them less reactive to the dairy. So I don't think certain dairies, I don't think there's an issue with them. Mostly I go for the cheeses and the low carb dairies. You have to be really careful. Yogurt, even if it's just plain yogurt with no additives, is really high in sugar. And people don't realize that. And so that's
one of the reasons they like it so much.
Exactly. Like, I have a hard time when people come in and they're having a lot of blood sugar regulation issues, and they have yogurt for breakfast every morning with some granola, and they're doing it for the protein and the probiotics.
And they're getting 60 or 100 grams of carbs right at breakfast.
Exactly. So there's a lot of restructuring in the thought process that needs to go on with that. But I think that things like low-carb cheeses and heavy whipping cream, which is really just fat, and it's delicious. I've gotten some really great looks at coffee shops when I've asked them to make a drink with heavy whipping cream.
Yes.
And sometimes people are like, are you sure you
Yeah.
want to do that?
Yeah.
That's a lot of calories.
You're going to get fat if you do that, right?
Yeah, like I've gotten that like judgmental look a few times. I'm like, oh, you have no idea.
Oh, I get that too. And so it's starting to spread around, at least around the Seattle area. So my massage therapist, like, we ran into each other at a coffee shop the same day, and I'd ordered, Americano with heavy whipping cream. And he behind me was like, I want the same thing. And then the barista's like, wow, this is really catching on. But they were like, all right, well, this isn't, you're quite indulgent, aren't you, that you're having this? And I was like, and I said, well, actually, I do it for health reasons. She's like, well, I mean, if your cholesterol's okay, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, no, I'm just going to get out of here.
Exactly. It's a much longer conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, our local coffee shop that we go to often, now there's a good handful of us that are keto, so they don't look at you weird when you say, oh, can I have the heavy whipping cream? And they just like set it on the counter for us, and we add what we want.
Which shop is that? Because I want to give a shout out because it's harder to find.
Yeah, so that's El Diablo coffee shop up on top of Queen Anne.
Okay, I might have to go check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of them still, like, you say heavy cream or heavy whipping cream and they give you half and half, or they're like some other magic liquid they call white lightning or something like that, and it's like, no, don't do that.
No, they're great about it.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, we'll put on the keto stamp of approval map.
Yep. My biggest thing in coming here to talk with you today, the big thing that I wanted to emphasize was the detox piece to all of this.
Yeah.
I think ketogenic diets are becoming more and more popular, and the red flag that goes up for me every time is I don't see any other ones looking at the detox piece and the liver health and making sure that your kidneys and your liver and all of those organs can handle the detox that happens.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the point that I really am hoping to drive home of, like, there's some other things here for folks to look at and to keep an eye on. And I think the other one that we check a lot at our clinic is uric acid, because uric acid at the beginning of a keto adaptation program goes up, and if you've started with a high uric acid and it goes up even more, it puts you at risk for maybe a gout attack, especially if you have a history of it, and it also puts you at risk for kidney stones. And there's things we can do about it, but it's a good thing.
Citrate.
Exactly. I have a lot of people on some higher doses of potassium citrate or potassium magnesium citrate, because magnesium's helpful in keto as well.
Yeah.
And so there's things that we can do to modify those, but I'd hate for someone to dive into a program and then end up causing more issues.
Well, and I just, like, all of those things you just mentioned are why I feel it's so important that most people who do this actually have some kind of a qualified healthcare practitioner work with them, right? This isn't just Weight Watchers that, anybody can cut back on their calories and probably be okay. Especially people that are on any kind of a medication for any reason should work with somebody who, a naturopath, somebody who's familiar with keto. There's medical doctors out that are doing it, and physician's assistants even. And I even work with, somebody's doctor, because I want them checking labs and things like that. And I think it's really important because this is such a powerful diet. It's a medically therapeutic diet, and I'm really passionate about most people really need to work with somebody that can monitor all these things, because there are things that can be done. It doesn't mean you can't ever do it, but it's somebody who needs to know what the heck they're doing. For example, I had somebody come to me that said, I was working with this practitioner, this nutritionist, that told me to avoid salt on keto, and I was like, what? Oh my gosh. And then other people that had no idea that you needed, most people need potassium citrate, especially if they have a kidney issue. And that in the beginning when I was switching over to ketogenic diet, somebody commented that, like, oh, well, that'd be really great if it didn't cause kidney stones so bad. And it's like, you don't have to go down that road either. And another reason why people need the support of a qualified practitioner, somebody who's experienced and knows, or at least is open to learn.
Absolutely. I've definitely had folks who they want to do this, but I don't take insurance, so they want to do it through their insurance doctor. Well, they take the program that I describe to them to their insurance doctor, and they're like, well, this isn't healthy. Like,
oh yeah.
And I think too, it's a really good point about the medications, because because it's so anti-inflammatory, oftentimes what's happening is I'm monitoring folks with antihypertensive or high blood pressure medication, and their blood pressure is coming down with this because their inflammation's coming down. So I've had people get what's called orthostatic hypotension, which is when they stand up, they get dizzy because their blood pressure is going too low, and that's because their medication is too high because they're now healthier. And if you don't have somebody on board who knows how to monitor and manage those things, it can get a little dicey.
Well, and especially diabetes medications as well, because you can run into really quickly territory where like it's really dangerous actually, because it lowers blood sugar so fast. And so if you're somebody that's, you know, on keto or thinking about it and you have medications, don't go post in some Facebook group to random people about like one symptom. Like go to a doctor, find a doctor, and just like we're doing the coffee shop stamp of approval, we can work on this this map of practitioners. In Seattle, we have a nice little pod of people that I'm working on interviewing all of you so that we can put the word out there. But and then I know that Jimmy Moore has a list of low carb doctors across the United States as well, and across in the other countries as well. So hopefully there'll be somebody in your corner too. But don't just ignore it. Like, work with your doctor or find a doctor that will work with you, because it's really important. Yeah. Anything else that we didn't hear? I mean, I'm sure there's tons of things we could
talk for hours. No, I think those are the big things that I wanted to share with everyone. Yeah,
well, great. I'm so glad you're here. This has been so awesome, and I'm so happy to make this connection and hear more about what you're doing. It's awesome work, and it must feel so fantastic to be able to change people's lives the way that you are. So it's really lovely to be able to work with people and to really see them make big changes in their life in a relatively short amount of time. So thanks for having me on. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I same thing. Like I've never had anything that's been so powerful for health transformation. It's really exciting. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Just like Dr. Jenna here, I'm going to have some more doctor interviews coming up. And so subscribe so you can catch them all right? But thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.